everybody's taking time away from their family. So with that, why don't we just get rolling? This is the folks you're gonna be talking to. So I'm John Stahl, CEO of Lean Dog. Started Lean Dog about 14 years ago. And when we first started Lean Dog, we started and founded the Cleveland Agile Meetup, which Chris has been actively managing. So thank you for Chris for that. After that, I was in Pittsburgh actually coaching with Jeff Patton, another great Agilist, and was there and realized we didn't have a Pit Agile meetup, so we started that one, and we've been paying for that meetup for years, not just the meetup dues, but Jeff and gang has done a great job. In fact, if you look at the stats there, even though Jeff's only 10 years old, they got more events and more members than the other cities. So, and then a year later, we founded and started the Buffalo Agile Meetup. So that's kind of how this came together with COVID. And then Brian's one of our Agile coaches, and he started a Columbus Business Agility Conference a few years ago. And so, really we were calling this a Tri-City Meetup because, as all of you organizers and all these great communities do, one of the hardest things is getting speakers and facilitating and donating your personal time away from your families to create these communities. And with COVID and everybody being distributed, we thought, well, hey, why don't we're all remote, why don't we try to bring these all together? So I think it's pretty cool that we actually have 4 cities involved. I actually am from Pittsburgh. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I actually went to Ohio State, so that's my tie to Columbus. We do a lot of coaching in Buffalo, New York. And so that's kind of, it's kind of been the closest community, not on an airplane for me. So the thought was, okay, why don't we do something different? And over the years, I got to become good friends with James and John through speaking at conferences, working together, collaborating. And we thought, okay, I'm going to call out a couple of favors and ask 2 good friends if they would give up their evening to talk to us about, 20 years after the, 21 years after the Agile Manifesto was created, what's new, like what's going on in the world. So we're going to get on with the agenda. Again, thanks to James and John. We have another Lean Dog coach, Jeff, that'd be the moderator and facilitate that. But our agenda right now is we're a little bit behind schedule already, but we're just kicking it off right now. Kevin Civic's going to kind of take it from here, and we're going to do a little bit of breakout because everybody knows the best part about these meetups and conferences and everything we do is a networking piece. So we're going to do a little bit of virtual for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to turn it over to Jeff to run the panel and then get everybody back home to their families. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Well, thanks, John. So the Buffalo Meetup sort of starts like this pretty often, where we send people out just to meet someone new, to get to know someone and get to know their situation and maybe make a connection that can help you going forward. So we're going to do the same thing here, and also going to ask you a little question as we send you off to sort of trigger a little bit of conversation. We'll be in the breakout rooms for maybe about 15 to 20 minutes. And then when we come back, if you have anything that you want to share with the bigger group, you're free to. If not, then we'll get into the rest of it. So the question that I want you to sort of keep in mind after you make your introductions and your connections is, why do you think the authors of the manifesto got together? What problem were they trying to solve originally? So if you can just sort of talk about that a little bit and come back and share what you come up with, I would appreciate that. And that's sort of that. So I'm going to start the breakout rooms. We'll come back, let's call it about 6:25 or so, and then we'll go from there. Any luck, James?
I've got my number 2 computer microphone working. I'd kind of like to work on this while people are breaking out.
Right.
I'm going to fiddle around with it a little bit longer. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem at all. I usually stick around here for stragglers that join late. So
yeah, okay. So let's see if I can. I just was fiddling around with it before I reset my system, so everything would work great. That works so well.
Always good to do that right before something's coming up.
Yeah. Oh,
I hear that.
can we hear
Yes.
now? I don't know what did it. The magic of Linux.
One of the 15 changes that you made.
Well, just restarted the system a couple of times. Just get rid of that. I'll just work with one now.
Nice.
All
Do you
right.
work on
So
a Linux desktop?
still working, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Got to turn up my. Yeah, you speak again now, please.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me
Get
now?
my volume set.
Hello. Can you? I don't know. I have nothing to say.
Well, yeah. Well, you can just count to 10, but that'll be fine.
Right.
All right. So where are you? You're in Buffalo?
Buffalo, New York. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
I've heard some stories about your pool playing.
Oh, that's overrated. It's just because everybody else is so bad.
John told me that I should make sure I never play pool with you.
Oh, well, we've always had fun playing. It's all about just enjoying some time together.
As long as there's no money on it, I'm in.
Oh, well, if you're not that good at it, we should definitely play for money.
Where are you located?
Right now, I'm in the Illinois, Chicago suburbs. It isn't winter there right now, but
Not quite.
yeah. So it's kind of like this. Nice day in Chicago. And I'm a Florida resident though. So I get these guys in my backyard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
So you have a house both in Florida and in Illinois, or?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have our house is in Florida now. We've downsized Illinois and upsized Florida.
Okay.
So we're in a townhouse here in Illinois, Northwest Burbs.
Nice.
And this is my old backyard, which was pretty nice. Now the new backyard has somebody in it, but it was nice when it didn't have anybody in it.
Yeah.
And now if we go out boating, we find alligators, right? So all the lean dogs are big into boating.
They are. Yeah. I am not a big boater, but the rest of them are.
Yeah, we like to boat. We're doing a lot of boating these days. We joined a boat club in Florida.
Yeah. I expect if I had stayed in Cleveland, I would have ended up being a big boater because I worked with John shortly before he started Lean Dog.
Yeah.
And it was an internship, and then my son was born, and my wife, but my girlfriend at the time lived in Buffalo. So it was time for me to move.
All right. Are you a Lean Dog employee or no?
I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So I wasn't for a while. I sort of made my way around the Buffalo area, a couple of different organizations, and about, how long ago was it? 2.5 years ago.
When John got the big gig down there?
Yeah.
Or over there, I mean?
Yeah.
Up there?
Around here, around the lake.
Yeah. Yeah. He'd asked me about that and then nothing happened with it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Other stuff I was doing anyway. So
that's how that thing goes, right?
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. The world is starting to wake up. Are you guys finding that with your business?
Yeah, a little bit. Things are getting busier, but nobody's traveling. They just shut down travel again. Any business travel, which I don't know. I don't mind. I think the remote thing has worked well, and it's been good for me because I get to work here and go up and be with my kids.
Right.
So I don't mind it too much.
Yep.
But yeah, it's interesting that it'll be interesting to see what happens once everything does really sort of truly open up again.
Mm-hmm.
Do people try to push to get back in person? Do they start shunning remote again like they always did?
Right. Yeah.
I
At the end of the meetup, I'd kind of be interested to see if you were on the call yesterday, right?
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to see if how GatherTown handles a whole bunch of people coming in. So
Okay.
maybe at the end, if people wanted to hang around a little bit longer, I could invite them into the Wingman Training Center.
Yeah. I
And,
think as we're doing the, so I think we're going to do sort of a Q&A type thing at the end. Well, I guess it's a panel, so I guess we're just going to close at the end.
At the end,
Uh,
if people would, felt like doing it, it would just be kind of helpful to me to see if
Yeah.
what it's like. The most people I've had is about 20. And if how many do you have at the meetup right now?
I have to look at the breakout rooms. Let's see, 9, 6, 7, 8. Around 40, it looks like.
Oh,
Is that
so
right?
if we could invite them to that, that'd be kind of fun. Fun for me anyway.
Yeah.
Another data point.
Yeah. So you use that for training classes, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got I've got a new room I was putting together for one of the classes I'm going to give.
Mhm.
And let's see. It's usually my classes are real programming oriented,
Right.
and this one's going to be a bit more talking oriented, and maybe kind of whiteboardy kind of activities.
Yeah.
And so I designed a room for that. Let me show you. So basically, each room has a whiteboard in it.
Okay.
And a virtual whiteboard, so you can go fiddle with that.
Yeah. And then are those pairing stations?
So each of these rooms would be a room for a small group of people, however
Yeah.
many that would be,
A small mob or whatever.
2 or more.
Yeah.
I've got computers set up on there, not necessarily for pairing. This is like yesterday's meeting. It was the rooms are divided in half.
Oh, okay.
These ones are full so that more people could work together.
Got it.
You can kind of design whatever you want.
Right.
This is under construction. I didn't finish it over here. We've got some unfurnished rooms. So
Yeah, it was a cool tool. It was fun. I was nervous about trying to do it for this and just not knowing what was going to go wrong.
well, let's maybe for 2 purposes we could do a trial to see
Yeah.
what it's like to have 40 people wander into the room. When all the important stuff is over.
Right.
And
See what
then
happens.
we'll know if you'll know if you might. I'm using the free tier because up to 25 people it's free, and after that they just say it degrades. So you might be able to, or then if you wanted to, you could just pay for the buck a head or whatever for the day or whatever it is,
Right.
or 2-hour meeting or whatever the heck. And then they just the rooms don't go away; they just slow down, I guess, after their prime time is over.
Right.
They allocate resources that way.
Right.
What time are people coming back? Oh, here comes some.
Oh, it looks like someone came in from someone new. Hi, welcome. Breakout rooms. I told them about 6:25
Yeah, okay.
to come back from the breakout room.
Hello, I'm Lan from Japan. I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh, no problem. Don't worry. The folks are in the breakout rooms now. They'll be there for another 5 minutes or so. So I'll go ahead and send you over to one. Just introductions, and the question that they're talking about is why do you think the folks that came together to write the manifesto, or came together and wrote the manifesto, got together? What were they trying to solve? What was the problem they were trying to solve? So
Okay,
I'll go ahead and
thank
send you to one of these rooms. Josh, are you here?
He's hiding.
Yeah. I think Josh is, yeah, he's a co-host. That's why I didn't send him anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Hey, so do you do any Rails work?
A little bit here and there, nothing, not a whole lot.
Yeah, okay.
Why do you ask?
Well, I don't either, but I own I do my own development on my own website.
Yeah.
And, considering that's not what I want to do, it gets behind. And so I'm in version 4 right now, and I need to, just to feel safe, that I'm not going to be abandoned. I want to get up to version 5.
Right.
And so I've been spending the day with that. And I had a couple of scares along the way so far, but
Nice.
but everything's still working, so.
I started my blog fairly recently, and whatever website type stuff, and I got it set up on Hugo,
Mhm.
and it was really dead simple, and just sort of works, which is kind of nice. Although I haven't gone through too much of an upgrade yet, so we'll see how that goes.
I've integrated my website pretty heavily with my training.
Yeah.
And so people that are in my training class, they would incomplete response from application. Ooh, that's not a good sign.
I got all the feedback and
So I just did an update of something, and I'm just poking around with it while we're talking here, but yeah, so as people are doing programming exercises, I can monitor what they're doing. I know, I can find out who's doing what.
yeah.
And that sort of thing. It's not very clear, but I'm just fiddling around right now, so I should probably stop fiddling around.
Oh, you got another minute or two.
Okay.
Hopefully you don't break something right before that.
Oh, that's a problem. Okay.
Hi, Sam. Welcome.
What's that?
Thank you.
Someone else joined Sam.
Thank you.
Howdy.
All right. Good evening.
The rest of the folks are in breakout rooms. They're going to be coming back in like a minute, so I'm not going to bother sending you over
Don't send me anywhere.
there.
I'm a super stick post-it.
Nice. Where are you?
I am in Columbus, Ohio.
Nice.
Do you know Bob Koss?
No,
All right.
but it's a solvable problem.
All right. Just so everyone knows, I'm going to close the breakout rooms now.
That is a solvable problem if it's a problem.
Well, I'm going to tell him James sent me to collect the $20.
He doesn't owe me $20 though.
Well,
Darn it.
see, it's both solvable and a problem.
If only.
Now. I got an upgrade.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome back. It's like some of the rooms have not closed yet. Some of you were in a hurry to get out of your rooms.
I guess in the end, though, we just finished right when the pop-up said that the room was going to close in 59 seconds. So
Nice.
Recording in progress.
Let's see. Everyone should be back now. So welcome back. Does anyone have anything they feel like sharing about sort of their conversation in the breakout rooms? The sort of question that was asked was, What do you think the authors of the manifesto were trying to solve? What problem were they trying to solve when they got together and ended up with the manifesto? Ken, if you're raising your hand, you don't have to. You can just talk.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to speak over anybody at the same time. I think a general theme emerged, which was there were a lot of great ideas, but none of them were holistically effective at solving all of the problems or the primary problems that traditional project and software management presented. And it wasn't until they, took an approach that brought a lot of different ideas together, and they were allowed to be distilled and formulated into what it ended up being, that it really become something effective. I think that's kind of what our group came up with, more or less.
I'll speak for our group. I took notes because everyone else was thinking hard. They did pretty good. Tired of documentations, just let us do our stuff and deliver. Wanted meaningful results versus, giant requirements document trying to do everything. No functionality until a big bang, which resulted in typical late learning versus iterative incremental development. Pretty good. I did not influence that or share any real things.
In our group, I think the focus was traditional. Am I muted?
I think it was mine.
Okay, traditional waterfall techniques just were not working, and the ways to improve them were represented in the Agile Manifesto, largely flexibility. If you have a large project, you don't know the answers, you can't schedule it in a waterfall method and expect it to work. So you have to have interaction, incrementalism, development, that kind of stuff. And probably the single biggest part of what differentiated beyond that flexible scheduling is the active involvement of the user, which, if you have to, in my opinion, if you have to pick one predictor of the success of a project, it's the degree to which the user is active in the project. But it was really in reaction to what wasn't working, which was the traditional waterfall type approaches.
Say, Amos, I know you have experience with the original Agile software list. How do you think today's Agile world compares with the original Lisp world?
Well, it's not as much Lisp as the type of projects, which was, artificial intelligence expert system kind of things, where you were lucky enough to work on small projects. You were lucky enough to have a domain expert if you're the knowledge engineer, and you could demand and expect that. And what Agile has, in some sense, done is to scale that up to bigger projects, more people, bigger deliverables, more of an expectation that we know in advance what we're going to get, as opposed to we're exploring how we can do a system that will behave intelligently in some domain. We have a better sense of what we want, but we don't really know how we're going to get there. So it's kind of like balancing degrees of uncertainty. There's less uncertainty, but there's also a lot more people. It's a bigger project. So it's it's just an evolution of, we make bigger things that have to do more with more people involved, and we don't know in advance, and we have to be flexible. And that's really what it comes down to. I think this is kind of iterative incremental development on steroids. It used to be small projects with a few people, and those are always still the easiest ones to deal with, in so many ways. And I still love, a 3 or 4 person project. God, that's so much fun, right? But that was the only way you could move to bigger projects with any sort of flexibility. And as we did more and more things that became more and more complicated, it was clear we were going to get screwed if we just kept, let me defer.
Great. Thanks, Amos.
All right.
Does anyone else have any?
Yeah, those were important points by Amos. I wonder, why don't we start with 2 or 3 person teams, get some kind of minimum project, and then let another more organized team scale it up?
Management support.
We used to do that at TogetherSoft. we kind of have a tiger team that would begin implementing the next rev and kind of scope it out with the new requirements and things like that and get it to a skeleton place. And then roll the rest of the team into it and just keep leapfrogging like that. About every 18 months, a brand new code line. Shocking as that sounds. Kicked ass, beat IBM at their own game. Rolled to Borland. Yay.
At Progressive, I had the opportunity to do quite a bit of that. I was lucky enough to, yeah, I mean, I was senior technical, but I was not I did not want to be a manager, but I was at that sort of pay level and whatnot. And I reported up to like the second tier of IT, which meant, you know, I could, if something had to be done, I didn't have to worry about any political BS. I just had a few people, like maybe 2 or 3 people total, and we'd prototype something, and it was all the way up to the top, and we didn't have to worry about any of the hoops to jump through as long as my boss was convinced we're doing something. And that is such an atypical situation in any sort of department in IT I've ever seen. So it comes down to, you've got to have some fairly senior sponsorship for that kind of approach. That gets you both the time and the high cover from political BS. If you step on toes and start looking into an area that, well, that's somebody else's, and why aren't you, there's a lot of impediments to small teams trying to get things started. Among other things, the stovepipes of other groups feeling like, well, why aren't I involved? And all of a sudden you got a big team. So you need to have a flexible organizational structure, and you need some very high level management support to enable that to happen.
We didn't really know about collaborating back then as much. I mean, you had to, when things got really bad, you started collaborating. But you would work for months at a time, kind of in, like you mentioned, the silos, and a lot of effort into dividing things up so everybody could go have their own silent place to go work. So there's still a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
I
And
think
it's probably not
biggest
just
silo,
one way.
I think the biggest silo is schema creation and maintenance. We still have these, database administrators. The programmers are always trying to work around them. What do you all think?
Yeah, I remember I was working with Stahl on a project. This was the embodiment of a matrixed organization that materialized in front of my very eyes. I never thought I'd see a project Gantt chart type resource allegation, where the DBA came and said, "Hi, I'm your 0.4 of a DBA. I will be here this day, and half of that." The UX, right? We only had partial. I thought, wow, this is crazy. And the DBA was initially, we'll create the schema for you. I'm like, okay, son, I've been doing, and I'm an Arrow guy, but I accidentally learned SQL through using RBase way back in the 80s. And lo and behold, it was like legit database commands that I learned. And I said, son, let me listen, I want to use you when it's really hard. We can, create schemas. We can, I know DDL, we know DDL, we'll create everything. And he got it and he understood it. And he actually said, all right, call me if you need me. But you're right. Like, that was from ground zero. It was an impediment in trying to be imposed on the team. I was like, no, we're going to run at the pace we run. We create classes, we create tables, we create classes, tables, and don't put that kind of a, process impediment in front of us. And they did, and we succeeded. But yeah, DBAs are a classic.
So let's abstract.
That makes sense, because when you need to be able to deal with other groups when you need, and if they trust you, they'll give you what you need and let you go back to whatever, rather than saying, well, that's our area, we need to control, yada, 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 which is what I was saying, how it's hard to have a small team. And it sounds like you had that good relationship with the DBA who basically said, okay, look, you know what you're doing. If you need some help, let me know when. Which is just, but you don't want to have a team of a cast of thousands to learn about a topic.
Yeah, that phone a friend capability is really important. Be able to get some help from somebody that knows something.
Yeah, that's always my joke. I know when I need an expert. I'm not an expert in anything, but I know when I need one.
Yeah, by the way, I sent you advice email today, John. I don't know if you saw it.
Sounds snarky.
No, it wasn't. I was looking for some help. You
Okay.
didn't save me today. I had to save myself. So, John, what was your perspective on the problem we were trying to solve at the Agile Manifesto?
Oh, well,
I don't know if we want to.
yeah, I don't know. Jeff needs to, maybe jump in, or Mr. Stahl.
Well, I think you guys were just looking for an excuse to go skiing. You maybe had a
know my
bet,
story.
side bet. There was something mischievous going on. It wasn't all about software development. I haven't figured that one out yet, but no.
That was a big part of the motivation for choosing that site versus Anguilla
Yeah.
in the Caribbean, which is hard to get to. The only island I was ever at for my honeymoon. I was like, oh, it's a cool island, but it's a pain in the ass to get to it.
Wait a minute, we were in Anguilla for our honeymoon too. And
I'm
it's
not going to say what year, because that would be a private message, but
92, whatever. I got married later in life.
I'm a little earlier than that, but
Yeah.
All right,
So-
so,
skiing was a big thing.
well, I mean, fun's an important part of what we do, right? So if you aren't having fun, then why?
You're in the
Right? So-
wrong business.
Yeah, exactly. So. But
All right.
but when I was early in my software career, and I worked with Amos at Progressive, I was young. I had no family. I could work more hours because I really had no commitments in life, and I got compensated based on how many lines of code I could throw over the wall to the next person, right, and make it their problem if they can't test it or get it out, right. And so my first like X years of my career, I worked with Amos. I mean, it was all about, yeah, I could live there at work. I could work 60 hours and people had families and kids. So fun was not like respect amongst humans about, hey, we work a hard 40 and sustainable pace was not part of the waterfall mantra, right? It was throw it over the wall, throw it over the wall, throw it over the wall. And I was, I had to be in a position in my life I could do that. But so I do think that fun and the manifesto and you guys getting together and working hard, but working smart, and balancing your life with your work. I don't think that was not part of the waterfall world. That wasn't part of the death march.
Well, that's alive and well in the Scrum world in some places, I think, where everything is about, I'm going to use a bad word now. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. Sprint. Right. So the sprint word, you've seen the Olympics, you know what happens. Sprint is not the right metaphor for what we do. So I'll go read some blogs about how people in development, in engineering, why they hate Agile. And they list all this stuff why they hate it. And it's pretty much, well, too bad you aren't doing Agile, because then you might not hate it so much. You're doing something else. You're being rushed by someone. You don't know how to work incrementally. And so you're feeling this pain because of because incremental management is forced on you. And you don't know how to support that incremental delivery approach. And so people are feeling the pain of that.
Question,
So
what?
maybe, sorry, Denise, go ahead.
Yeah. So why are you saying sprint's a bad word? You like the word incremental better than sprint? What would be the word you would replace that with?
Any word. No, I'm sorry. Well, I don't like
You can't just
sprint.
say that.
and,
I got lots of words, man.
no, I don't like sprint. I don't think I have a picture handy for sprint. I've got other pictures handy. Like, you dig yourself in a hole and the first law of holes. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
Stop digging.
But, yeah, so I don't like sprint because literally you've seen the Olympics and you see what they expect of an Olympic runner doing a sprint. They're supposed to give everything for that whole sprint and then they could collapse at the end. Now in Scrum, 5 minutes later, they got to get picked back up off the ground and given oxygen and do another one. I just think it's the wrong metaphor.
Yeah, but don't forget, they also take the last maybe 10 yards of the track and add it to the next track. So they almost never actually finish the race, and they drag a part of their track with them. Hey, let's do more.
Yeah,
because we didn't before.
All right,
Okay, I do use sprint
a lot because I'm a Scrum Master. So,
Well,
but I
everybody
see-
does.
but I mean, what I have seen is when we do the sprint review, when we're showing our customers what we're working on, there's been times where we're working on the wrong thing. Either our assumption was there or the customer had a time to rethink really what they needed in that product. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so I think it's a value. I mean, we use SAFE. I work for Broadcom and we do SAFE. So that's probably another bad word for you too. It's a 4-letter
No,
word.
well, no, I don't have any objection to safe.
Okay.
It is a 4-letter word.
But I mean, I see the value in sprint. I mean, because we cut our work down in little increments. So we do
Oh yeah,
things.
so I have nothing. Yeah, I'm totally in favor of incremental delivery, incremental development, and working in iterations. I just think sprint gives the wrong idea because it makes people that are maybe not in the know of how to manage their work in a sprint. Sprint, that just means go as fast as you can. Don't stop, don't think, just go fast.
Yeah, I mean, we call them iterations. We don't use the word sprint.
Yep.
There
Yeah, me as an
seems to
XP
be-
guy called iteration too.
There seems to be a trend in that direction for many practitioners to use iteration in favor of, as opposed to sprint.
Does anybody have flexible sized iterations? I don't like the fact that it's every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. I think it should be sized based on what is it we want to accomplish in the next block of time. And, should that be 2 weeks? No, this go around 4 weeks on another one. I don't like the rigorous fixed time slice concept. I think it kind of depends on where you are and what you're trying to get done.
To me, I think they're kind of training wheels.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the way to get started.
Yeah, I could care less. Like maybe in the beginning, if you're trying to set a cadence and build a new team and build a new product, and you want to at least have some window to say, all right, well, at least within the next 2 weeks, we'll have the Hello World app or something like that. That might make sense in the beginning, but I truly don't understand why a team that's working on a product for 5 years is still doing sprints. Like, why? Because Sharon, you just said the magic words. The only thing I care about is, are we working on the right thing? Because, and I think Ellen had a horror story where, a release shown to the clients only to learn, maybe it was internal customers, but only to learn, oh, that's not what we want. We don't need that anymore. Oh, darn, because we can't easily even pull it out of the release. That's the worst thing. You built the wrong thing. You'll never get the time back, and you didn't spend the time building the right thing. And it's like the project was canceled at $20 million. I always like to ask, well, what were you thinking at 19?
What were you thinking after one?
It's and a miracle happens and the hockey stick or something how that kind of thing happens is, I like to say, I'll use the phrase, mind the gap in time between doing something and getting feedback. You want that to be as small as possible, whether it's TDD, getting tests, behavior development, getting some acceptance tests, or we're really not sure about this UI, getting some hey, subject matter expert, hey, user, can you look at this? Getting it way before any formal, official 2-week sprint or sprint review. It's much easier though to fall back on process. SAFE is a beautiful, awesome thing if you don't want people to have to think as hard, because you can just hide behind tons of process. And it's prescriptive, so management loves it, right? So to me, don't let go of that undying need to deliver the right thing at the right time to the customer and truly understand what value means for you and your team. That's I think Agile is the hardest. At least doing Agile properly is the hardest thing to do, because you can't rest, you can't relax.
I kind of wonder how we actually survived and succeeded with planning for months, on requirements, and then executing and then delivering the wrong thing. You're going to redo stuff. The feedback loop for me should be pretty short because I'm my own customer. when I'm building the infrastructure to help me run my business, like my website and such for doing training. And I'll get into something and I'll deliver to myself the thing I thought I wanted. And as soon as I have it, I go, no, that doesn't work. That's not what I wanted. I wanted something kind of like that, but now I know more of what I want and I got to work my way towards it. If instead I picked out in the lab, made an elaborate idea of what I wanted and then tried it, I would have the same problem because I'm not living it, and software changes your how you work. And so it's changing you as you're using it. So you're going to have to change it again.
James, that's a really powerful observation. The fact that you can't even deliver to yourself what you want. And I think there's a lot of lessons to take away from that.
All right, guys, I'm going to jump in for a second here because we've gotten way down to some of the challenges that we're being faced with here for a moment. And I'd like to get back to the question. We're going to come back to this. We're going to take shots at Scrum later. We'll take shots at SAFe and describe those a little bit. But before we get to those, I'm still curious, James and John, we haven't heard the official answer. I'd love to hear what, and maybe you can start by talking a little bit about how were you working in the 90s that led up to you coming together in 2001 and creating that manifesto. But you know, I'd love to maybe hear from you. What problem were you trying to solve when you came together?
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly go. I was working in DoD, Defense Department type projects, flight simulators for centrifuges and mission planning systems and things like that. So I was exposed for the first time to MIL standard 2167, and then there was another one, but there literally was a MIL spec for how to do software development. And it had all kinds of acronyms and all kinds of processes to work. And as some of the demands from the customer wanted the certain documents and things like that, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, man, I'm a taxpayer, and this is just, you know, we're doing research and development, and we're trying to predict what we're going to do for a whole year. In actual, it's not like production work. It literally was R&D. So of course, the whole mantra there is, I don't know, learn and adapt and learn and adapt and right. So it was a complete antithesis to what we were doing. So I found out quickly to build a rapport with the customer. And look, this is the pile of money we got. This is the outcomes we're looking for. Let's just work together and do the right thing for our goal. And so the heavyweight processes like rational unified process and that kind of crazy ass large process waterfall type process, that's what I experienced back then. And as an engineer and as somebody itching just to get things done and show progress, it was like, the hell's wrong with you software people? This is just stupid. Like, why do you work like this? And so that's what I recall at the time. You know, there was a ton of marketing around IBM and RUP and not much around what we were doing with Peter. I was working with Peter Code, feature-driven development. And then James, you can take it over for what you were working on.
All right. Okay. I'll go back in the Wayback Machine a little bit further. In the 80s, I started off in the government kind of stuff too with the FAA. And luckily the company I went into, they were pretty immature, but our second project was, here's all the documents you have to produce. And it was, you know, we had to do a lot more upfront work than we did in our first project. I left that company and went to another company, which was total chaos. And this is where I met Bob Martin. We worked together in the 80s at a company called Pterodine in the Chicago burbs. And total chaos. And part of what I was going there for is to help them get some process. And so we were trying to learn waterfall. And we actually got better by trying to learn waterfall, but it turned out big waterfall didn't work, but a lot of little waterfalls weren't too bad. And so we made a bunch of little waterfalls and kind of worked. Not really intending to, you know, discover anything, but it just, we wanted to plan it out and we went from chaos to something better. The 90s, OO was getting a lot of traction and iteration was, you know, a possibility. You shouldn't just do it all at once. You should do things, you know, and then in 1999, I'm invited to the first extreme programming immersion when Bob Martin's company had an arrangement with Kent Beck and Ward Cunningham and Ron Jeffries and Martin Fowler to start training people. And we had a big event, and it was kind of shocking, all the things, the practices of extreme programming. Now to the question about what problem we're trying to solve. As extreme programmers, we were pretty clear in the training classes, at least by the second one, what we're trying to do and why you would care. The first extreme programming immersion was attended by the acolytes, the people that were already following Kent Beck and Martin Fowler and Ward, was attended by them, so everybody was kind of believers. But then other crowds were more doubters, and we had to change our approach, which is what problem we're trying to solve. And so what problem we're trying to solve, Kent and Ward were amazing to have actually solved some of these problems. We're late a lot. The quality is bad and people are getting burned out and customers are dissatisfied. All these things, these were the problems that we were trying to solve. Now, those are pretty grandiose problems, but you could actually take some of the practices of extreme programming, iterative development and such, and draw a fairly short logic chain to solutions to those problems, where you might get somebody to say, okay, I'll give it a try. And so that's kind of the roots as I kind of see it. And I find that those problems are still with us today in a large extent. And
yeah, and I would just add the original, how when you go to a conference in a hotel and they'll have something up on the monitors. I think if you go to Agile Uprising, I know there's some artifacts that I uploaded some of my notes and things like that. But there was a original sign. It was about lightweight methodology.
Oh yeah,
So hint that there was a bunch of lightweight methodologists.
Yeah, that was
versus heavyweight.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So the thing, so you're fighting. So what was the group pulled together about? And so, as an extreme programmer, I was there to solve those problems because those are engineering problems and I wanted to solve those. But what this group was about, as I recall, and it was a long time ago, was IBM was buying up Rational and all the tool companies, or maybe this was Rational buying up all the tool companies and then IBM bought them. And processes were just getting bigger and bigger and the weight was getting larger on people rather than getting smaller. Even though there was a way to do RUP really small, that wasn't the direction that any RUP consultant was pushing anybody. And so I think the lightweight methods, and we're interested in doing things with less baggage. And funny thing Ward said as soon as we got into the room together. Oh, and I will tell you all, I did go skiing, so when Bob says, you want to go to Snowbird and do blah, 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 it's like, yes, the answer is yes. So I definitely want to.
You just heard the Snowbird part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious. Sorry, James. I'm curious there. You talked about RUP and you talked about XP and all of these processes that were in there, and yet none of these processes made it into the manifesto. The manifesto came up with other words. I'm curious as to how that happened and how none of these processes sort of showed up in the manifesto. It was
I think it was very on purpose. So John was there representing FDD, and Alistair Coburn, his key organizer, he was there with his crystal approach. He and
James Highsmith.
Jim Highsmith, yeah. And Steve Meller was there because he was into model-driven approaches, and Bob and me and Kent and Ward and Ron were there because we were extreme programming. And then you had the Schwaber and company there with Scrum, and I don't know.
Ari was DSDM.
DSDM, yep, Ari with DSDM. And then Brian Merrick.
Tester.
Bringing a test perspective.
Yep.
All right. And so the word lightweight, kind of brought us together to try to get some baggage off our shoulders. And Ward right away in the room says, we're going to need a different name. Who wants to be known as a lightweight? And
that's funny. I attribute that to Alistair for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the beauties of the whole, like if you grilled all of us independently with the same question, you'd get some overlapping, sort of correctness, and then a lot of fuzziness, which I think is a testament to the fact that there were there were some pretty famous people in the room. I wasn't one of them.
Me neither. I was there to go see.
They left their egos we left our egos at the door. The idea was, is there some, we're a bunch of modelers, a bunch of people who can abstract things and build, a problem domain space type thing. So I think of it as we were attempting to look across these lightweight methodologies to see what was the gist, what things bubbled up that were kind of consistent. And that's why it was abstract. And that's why no methodology, at least to my knowledge, it was really a quest for kind of digging into why are we successful with these smaller, less marketed methodologies than, RUP.
So Jeff's asked a question in the chat. I'm going to do a sort of a precursor to that one before we get to it, because I'd love to know, before we get to today, if you were facing these problems in the 80s or 90s, which is Jeff's question, how do you think we've evolved, or how do you think the world has changed in the last 20 years? And the follow-up to that is going to be Jeff's question, is how do we move the needle starting now? But let's maybe start with the last 20 years. How have things changed, or have they changed in the last 20 years since you guys got together and came up with this?
Can I add one thing to what John was saying?
Of
Because
course.
I think it's a real critical thing that we are trying to do that doesn't get done enough these days, which was something that I know the company I worked for in the 80s was teaching us, which is, what do we agree on? Can we find out what we agree on? Because then we can do something about what we agree on, and not focus instead of what we don't agree on, because then we'll never get out of that battle. But if we could find what we do agree on, then that's where those 4 points came from. We had note cards, because there were a bunch of extreme programming people there. So of course you have note cards. I'm sorry to not.
Good point. So where have we come in the past 20 years? I think the most heartwarming things are, from being, speaking at various places around the world, especially recently in not the US. So it's almost as if, whether it was Greece or Colombia or India, places are, I don't want to say freshly discovering, but certainly freshly embracing the Agile Manifesto. And just the sheer, and this happened from, almost moments after we, Ward said, hey, why don't you throw this up on the web? Yeah, sure, why not? Who cares, right? I doubt anything will happen. Right? Nobody thought anything was going to happen. So it was just, yeah, you might as well. We came up with something, share it. Not, oh yeah, this is going to be huge. Just can't wait to start selling certificates for this. But anyway, to me, millions of people were spoken to. I think a couple of people in the breakout room mentioned how, or at least it might have been Jeff, mentioned how it spoke to him, and that sentiment across cultures, across languages, that's the thing that is the most heartwarming. It's as if, like, thank God I'm not crazy. All this weird stuff that we're supposed to do is bullshit, and here's something that I can grab onto that finally makes some pragmatic sense. And I feel like it unleashed millions of people, at least with a chance. So you're like the old Dumb and Dumber, like, so you say I have a chance, right? So I think that, that's really what happened. So are people still doing stupid stuff? Yeah, well, welcome to free choice and free will, right? But millions of people got to experience better ways of delivering software. And some people have done it, and that's propelled their companies or organizations. Other folks can't figure it out, so so be it. We can't solve world hunger either. It might actually be easier than helping people deliver software more smartly.
Well, a number of developers the amount of software being developed every year is so much more than the year before. So there's a much bigger chance that you'll do it the way that the people around you are doing it than some other way. So you actually have to be kind of looking for a solution to problems that actually bump into this stuff, so.
Good point.
John,
So-
you mentioned that someone suggested putting it up online and people were like, yeah, okay, whatever. But that raises the question of what were you actually intending to do with the output of this gathering? Were you just going to take it back and employ these ideas in your own workplaces, or did you have a broader strategy in mind?
No broader strategy, a curious gathering with skiing and beer. And I think it was just in the spirit of the OOPS laws, other types of gatherings. What were some of the ones I never got to go to, but I read about them? Like, I want to say they were maybe in the Northwest, and they were about patterns, whatever some of those gatherings were. And then they would publish maybe, some pages of findings. So I think it was along that line, like, oh, well, at least we came up with some bullets and some principles, might as well share them. So
Yeah, I
there
kind of
was
remember.
no talk at all about any kind of downstream thought. I don't remember anything strategic. Zero. It was really just, what the hell can we do to combat the one giant marketing gorilla in the room that's spewing crap and a terrible way to do software? Yet we have a bunch of smaller players. It's almost like, hey, can we form a union? Let's call it, or the cooperative or something. Right?
So John,
yeah.
Who threw up the webpage? Manifesto.
Ward.
We worked on, that's when I first learned about the wiki, because we worked on his wiki. But I was like, oh, wiki, that's cool. Huh. I learned a lot in that meeting. I learned about Scrum and DSDM, never heard of either of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or FTD.
Well, that I knew, and I knew XP.
Yeah, but I didn't.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I've heard Bob, I don't remember this from the time, but I've heard Bob explain that a manifesto was something that he wanted us to come up with in the meeting. I kind of thought that was Martin's objective too, but Martin Fowler's. But there was a kind of a push to find out what we agreed on and to write something down.
Do you remember at the time what brought, besides the skiing, what it was that sort of pulled you into this in the place, and how the 17 of you came to be the 17 that were invited?
Well, if you're involved in extreme programming in 1999, you think, oh my gosh, we can save the world, because it was a radically different way of working that I'm like still shocked to this day that Ward and Kent came up with 10 practices or whatever number it is, 12 practices that fit together so nicely and help solve real problems and don't add a bunch of weight to your shoulders. And so I, as an engineer wanting to find better ways to work, I was really interested in helping to promote that and hang out with the guys that, were creating that. Certainly that was big for me. And then to walk in the door and hear all this talk about people and people problems, it's like, wait a second, I'm an engineer. I didn't come here for this people stuff. And but they were right. Most problems are people problems.
So maybe I can dig in on that one a little bit more, because we often hear of people, process, and technology as sort of the holy trinity of things that come together. And the manifesto seems to very much be focused on people. And I am surprised, James, and you just sort of alluded to it there, that 17 engineers, 17 software people, 17 people came together and really made a focus on people, not process and technology. And I'm surprised that given the group of people that were there, that there is such a strong people focus. I'm wondering, do you have any recollection of that, or how you've seen it play out since 2001?
I would blame Alistair and Ward. So I'd been seeing Alistair for a while out there because I had a contract job out there, and we went skiing a few times. And we got to talk about software on the rides up and Dodge moguls on the way down. And So it was interesting to talk to him. It's like, yeah, the XP is a great thing, but the process doesn't matter as much as the people. If you get good people, they'll come up with a good way to work together. So it's really about people and blah, blah, blah. And he tells me all the things he studied. And so he was, he's not a quiet guy. And he was very, a proponent of the people thing is really important. And Ward is a quiet guy and recognize the same thing. So you have these two really smart guys helping us see that people really matter a lot. I don't know. That's kind of my recollection of it. I kind of forget where some of the other people were, but
Yeah.
those are the two strong personalities in that.
And I,
to me anyway.
I remember one of the exercises, I think led by Martin, about those cards, writing words on them that mattered, and then we went over it. And I think at least one of the things I wrote was maybe honesty. The illusion of a project plan and Gantt charts and the whole waterfall and the big bang, and then or the big reveal type thing. That's just, you can't be 98% done with a feature. It's either done or not, right? I mean, it's that whole just get off of that kind of illusion. And I think possibly some of the other, as folks describe their processes, some of the gists that sort of bubbled up might have been the realization of how important the conversations were to being successful. The conversations, if you can imagine my DoD days and working with contracts and client, the mill standard specifications and all that gobbledygook. And then you look at those bullets, it's pretty easy to understand why things are this over that, because the process and tools are easy from a large degree. It's the interactions, it's the make sure you build that rapport with the customer, make sure you have the ability to respond to changes, because in an R&D world especially, don't get so wedded to your damn plan and don't plan so far out, things like that, right? It's not hard to see why those bullets tackled what I would call more of the difficult challenges in reality, doing software with more than just James being the customer and James being the crappy developer that doesn't satisfy the customer sometimes, right? That's an easy
doesn't know what they want, and a developer doesn't know how to build it.
Right. So I think that's why it came out, people oriented.
So I
remember
hear
asking
Sorry,
Kent about, well, Kent, wouldn't it be good if we could get the customer to sign off on a document saying that's what they want? And he goes, well, you could put some energy into that if you want to, but it won't stop them from changing their mind. They're going to change their mind anyway. So get good at change instead. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. Okay, let's go get good at change. Now,
yeah,
nicely diffusing that.
So
that
I hear
felt important thing.
I hear you talk about this, and it's not the first time that I've heard this sort of sentiment come out about how valuable people are and the interactions and folks. And yet so many of our organizations, and we caught this earlier as the conversation earlier started off, that so many folks have taken Agile to mean I need to stand up for 15 minutes a day and I have to write all of my requirements in a goofy format. And in order to do that, that'll make me Agile, totally missing, I think, some of the key things that you're alluding to and saying here. What are some things in your opinion, in your experience, that you've seen that maybe could help us evolve beyond standing up for 15 minutes a day? I mean, I've seen people suggest that we should do a 15-minute plank every day as an alternative, but I'm not sure that's the solution.
I don't think I could do that.
No.
I'm not sure what my max plank has been, but that's pretty rough. 15. Yeah. Pretty sure I'd break down after maybe 2, maybe 3 minutes. Yeah. But good idea. You get good at it. People can't talk so well when they're face down either.
Okay, so it's just people lose sight of what problem they're trying to solve. Why did Ken suggest a 15-minute meeting every day? So that people would talk to each other and find out what they're doing and see if we could help each other. I don't believe that everything's going well every day, but do people go through the motions of that thing? Because the important part is going through the motions, because that's what somebody said they needed to do, is go through the motions. Why not instead find a way to solve real problems? So as an engineer, might want to ask, what problem are we solving by doing that? And if somebody could tell me a good reason why, and then I might actually come to that meeting and contribute to try to help solve that problem. But if I don't know what problem I'm trying to solve by doing a stand-up meeting, I'm going to just think, okay, another ritual. Okay, I can do it. Keep my boss happy. Meet him every day instead of only once a week. It seems like a waste of my time, but if you were actually getting something out of it, it wouldn't be a waste of time. Now, one of the evolutions of that is mob programming. Instead of waiting till once a day to ask people for help, you just work together all day long. It's like, oh, in pair programming was the same idea. Let's together have two people that can more quickly solve problems than two people individually. But the keyboards aren't active. James, here's an inactive keyboard right here. No one's typing on it. Yeah, okay, so what?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key, is really to understand. I mean, I don't know why there's all this martial arts stuff in the software world, but like shu ha ri, that kind of thing. And I think shu is not the thing on your foot, but it has to do with I'm learning, I'm following a recipe. And so that's okay to start, right? If I'm baking or cooking, I might follow the recipe. Maybe because I've cooked more, I could tweak it on the fly the first time because I have ideas about the impact of that. And the blast radius is small. And I think if you merely go through the motions and don't understand why, to James' point, that's the flaw. That's why a lot of companies love SAFe, because there's a lot of motions. There's beautiful templates of things you can do. You know, like I'm pretty sure if I take the SAFe diagram and put my finger on it, close my eyes, you know, it's got agile and lean stuff that I'm not going to argue with, because it's all the kinds of things that I dearly love and practice and follow. But it's how do you put that together? It's how do you think about things in terms of the return on that investment? Whether did you do too much documentation up front or not enough, right? Because
they're both a problem.
It's that you take that opportunity to reflect on what you did, what value it presented. Could you have done less? Like try to be lazy. Try to do a little bit, like someone asked about MVP. You'd be shocked sometimes of how really I can go and deliver like a really, really, really small, way less than necessary first step in the right circumstance with the right customer, you know, that I can do like in a SaaS app. So it's only them. It's, you know, it's very, the blast radius is controlled. But the idea there is take the smallest step, be humble, get feedback as soon as possible. You know, and that goes with all the processes like MVP. Could you have done less? Like I often say, think of the smallest thing you can do and then do slightly less. Because you can always do more. You can never get back extra, you know, wasted time. That'll never come back. But you can always go, oh crap, that didn't taste good. Okay, add some more salt. You can't take salt out once you over salt it, right? It's I don't know, but this is hard because a lot of it is perspective flexing. It's how can you have empathy with the customer? How can you sort of stand out beyond yourself and have a different perspective about what you're doing? So I'm not saying it's easy for everyone, but yeah, that's to me, it's be a little more critical of why we do things. Try to understand it.
I want to keep going down this road, but before we do, Amos, there's a question here. So I wanted to get you in, Amos. Are you able to unmute yourself there? There's
perfect timing. By the way, it's pronounced Amos, like famous Amos cookies.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But anyway, we just heard mention of the customer, and you know, from my experience, and you know, it may not have all been agile, but it's been, you know, many decades. And probably the single most important thing was having FaceTime with the customer, having them see what you're doing, having you understand what their business issue are, viscerally understand, so that, you know, you can make the decisions or you can ask the questions and you know when to do that. When I first started doing COBOL, it was like, oh, he's the computer guy, just give him what he wants. But I got to talk to the customers. And then I became a knowledge engineer. So then I had my domain expert sitting elbow to elbow with me hours every week, just learning what he knew, learning what I was trying to do, demonstrating at each step of the way. And that is the thing that, you know, I think that's, you know, ideally in every project, you'd have the business person, the IT people living together, and it doesn't work that way. But that is that level of communication where you're going to get the most effective systems done as quickly as possible. But then you end up, well, we got N IT people and we got one domain expert or business person. So then you have to communicate both the requirements and the visceral understanding of what's really going on. It's not what's written. It's, wait a minute, well, he said this, but they really are trying to do that. So let's not lose sight of what the real goal was, because it was written in a requirements document. So then you have the daily stand-ups where you try to share your learnings within the group. And you know, when you have 4 or 5 people in a stand-up, it's not 15 minutes. It's, you get down, you sit in the room, you talk about what everybody's doing, figure out who needs help, and you do that daily. And it doesn't take 15 minutes. It takes as long as it takes. And that's, again, it's a question of scale. You know, you go from a couple of people to, you know, a half dozen people, and the problems come in when you have to get more and more people actively involved in parallel in a process that is centered around, I'm dealing with the customer, so I'm right on what they need. And so it really is about communication and people, and then expanding out what's a one-on-one process to a 1-on-6 process to a, you know, 3 agile sub-teams in a team process. And somewhere you lose the customer because you got too much, you know, you got too much overhead involved in coordinating the sub-teams and the meetings and the sprints and the cards and the whatever. The thing that is I've always found is, if you can get close to the requirements, the people that need it, and have them actively involved in seeing what you're doing, get that business involvement, not just, you know, dollars, but actual involvement. That is probably the single most important determinant of success of a new development kind of effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You got to know what problem they're trying to solve, right?
Yeah.
That's how you find out what problem they want to solve.
I think maybe as engineers, we're blessed with a system thinking and holistic systems. You know, you can't just, hey, I want to fly faster. Okay, well, we can't go as far. Wait, what? I want to carry more. Okay, well, we can't fly as fast, huh? I mean, there is no, you can't just accelerate. Hey, I want to do all the UX design. Okay, well, you should. Don't do that. And I think the other, that's one way to sum that up is risk mitigation, understanding what things are important to know now, what things do I need to know ahead of time, what don't I need. And you know, that's another unfortunate fallacy. A lot of organizations do way too much upfront work, or consequently, sometimes they don't do enough. Like, to me, you have to have enough of a sense of what the problem domain is, enough a sense of what the architecture is. I don't need the details down to middle name. I just might need to know I need a user, or I need a mortgage application, or, you know, not all the, so it's kind of understanding that all that upfront work could have been delivered more just in time. And somehow you need to learn how to differentiate between, you know, like what risks are you mitigating by doing too much upfront, and what risks are you actually causing in terms of now having that sense of, oh my gosh, we did all that work. We have a 50-page document. We have to do it all. Right now, you're actually losing optionality. You're baking in things that you might not have needed to have baked in that early in the process, and that's a risk as well. So, you know, these are hard concepts sometimes, easy to say, but hard to do.
Yeah, I've got a client who dedicated 3 people for a year to analysis and design of a system. And then 3 weeks into code, they threw it all away. So they wasted 3 years of, now maybe they had to spend those 3 years to know that their 3 weeks of code were no good, but they discovered that their critical flaws in what they modeled for a year, 3 people, and they weren't too happy about that. I got to come in after that.
Yeah, and it's about, sorry, Jeff, you know, follow up on it. It's about when, I'm coaching teams right now. When I see things like that, it's a great opportunity. One, I think somebody was talking about, I'll know it when I see it. That might have been James. But the reaction that I try to help the team get to is, all right, that was despite you did all kinds of mock-ups, you did all kinds of work up front, and it was still wrong. So what do we learn from this? We learn maybe how can we more quickly get to the point where we see it? Because you might not be right. Right. And so it's things like that that you need to work on, how to accelerate that learning, and don't take all that upfront time. If you could have figured out what's the riskiest part of this, don't wait. Try to find that out ASAP.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a missing thing from, well, maybe not stressed enough, but risk identification, right? So what are our known unknowns, right? To channel Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, right? Known unknowns. What are the known unknowns? Because there's a bunch of unknown unknowns too, but at least what are the ones we know? And let's go start to do something about those. And
it's
risk
interesting
reducing.
that we as people would rather be wrong than admit we don't know something.
Well, got to grow up. I used to think I knew everything. I've learned a lot since then.
All right, so it's been 20 years. We've obviously got some challenges going on right now. There's a bunch of newer things that are starting to emerge. We've touched on MVP as a not a new, but it's a newer type of concept. You've touched on a little bit as well. The idea of mobbing is a relatively newer concept that has taken popularity as building on the pairing practices. There's div, dev, biz, sec, ops, and every other version of ops in there as well. How do these new practices fit in? How do these lead into perhaps the future of working in agile ways? All of those things, the mobbing, biz dev ops, biz dev, sec ops. Yeah.
So we're talking about automating boring things, right? Making it so that when we make a change here, we can deliver it, right? Because the world wants stuff faster. I got to tell you, I'm not surprised by it. And I don't know why it's not just called Extreme Programming Extended. Right. And if you read the Pragmatic Programmer back in 1998, they said, if you're doing something boring, automate it. It's like, yeah, but that's hard. Yeah, but do it, right? Hard is fun. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I often said it, if I found myself doing the same thing by about the third time, I'm looking to automate it. And even in architecture, like I want the boring bits. That's one of the reasons I love Rails, for example, is it basically embodied like an architecture that I helped create back in the mid 90s. Very, very similar kind of the problem domain drives everything. There's a bunch of boilerplate crap to get it from, the database up to the UI and back again, but that's all boring. So templatize the crap out of that, put it, bury that in whatever classes. And if you change things, change it everywhere. And instead spend your money, i.e. your time and energy, delighting the customer with things at the solution space. Not all this boilerplate crap that nobody sees or cares about. And so I think, yeah, to me, DevOps is a natural evolution. I see somebody putting that in there. I would agree, Kevin, that it's about, if you marry lean and agile principles, how can I drive some of the waste out of the system? How can I drive out some of the wait times? How can I like to say, fix it in process, right? Back in 95 in this IBM manufacturing execution system, that the same process is C++. We had it, I basically said, look, again, I'm an Aero guy that kind of learned how to code and do object modeling and stuff like that, but I'm not the sysadmin. So I made sure our team made it so easy. I basically gave the edict, like, make it so easy that even I can press the build button and start it and get the server, so that the last one out hit the build button, and in the morning we come in and either find error messages, and we do all kinds of advanced things to help make things automated. Back then, automated, even metrics and heuristics, things like ways to analyze the code or code smells, stuff like that. Stuff that you can automate. That's why I say be lazy, because that usually makes you do more fun stuff instead of the boring, mundane. But it's much easier to do the boring and mundane. It's much easier to treat things like a one-off. Much easier just to follow a process without a sense of the value or not that whatever step you're doing is generating.
Great question from Greg in the chat here as well. Have there been issues or circumstances? I'm going to go back and look over the last 20 years. I'm trying to go into the future right now, but I want to catch Greg's question here, and I should have got it before we moved into the future. But Greg's asking about, have there been circumstances or situations in the last 20 years where a tweak to the principles or not being able to follow them has been warranted or has made sense to you?
The principles, the 12 and not the 4? Is that what you mean, Greg? Or do you mean the 4 tenets?
How about all 16? Let's group them together.
Yes, either or both. My question is broad.
I'm touching the 4. The 4, tell me what's wrong with the 4. The 4, I think, all right, this is immodest as hell. I said it at the 10th year anniversary, and I think of it in a similar manner, but on about 1,000th or 100,000th of the scale. That the Declaration of Independence, the what happened in the United States, an odd bunch of folks got together, somewhat randomly, and created something that pretty much stands the test of time, because I think just like it got to the essence of governing peoples, I think the 4 bullets got to the essence of software development. So essences don't usually change. That's why I would say those 4 bullets, I'm not touching them because I don't think you can quibble with them. Now, 12 principles, there might be some things you could probably fiddle with, but I'll just stop there and see what James thinks.
Well, I'll add to the 4 points. In a way, they don't mean anything. They're not telling you to do anything. They're just saying, work with each other. Does that, over processes and tools, you mean you don't need compilers anymore? No, of course you need tools and processes, but work with each other. I've had to bring up this old thing just because I can't remember it. Working software over comprehensive documentation. It's like, yeah, but we need documentation. Yeah, okay, but if you document and it doesn't work, what does a customer use? Okay, customer collaboration over contract. Yeah, but we can't do work without contracts. Okay, but the contracts from when things go wrong. So let's work together. I mean, we don't do contracts because things are going to go right. It's lawyers need something to do. And what if somebody screws you? You're going to have some recourse. Okay, but wouldn't we like a trusting relationship instead? And you're not going to follow the plan, responding to change. It's like, yeah, well, let's have a plan, but realize it's going to change. So it's not saying to do anything. It's just saying, react, adapt, be nice to each other, work together.
Yeah, and I think something that I've really began to stress in the past 5 or so years is humility, shockingly, and curiosity. But the humility comes even at the top and the bottom of the manifesto by the mere statement of we are uncovering, not we figured it all out. Wait, everybody pay attention. We found, the holy grail of software development. Now, we're still in the process of uncovering it. And we're doing it by helping others do it, right? So it's not even like, no, we've just gone away and gazed at our navel and figured this all out. And at the bottom, we add, oh, by the way, this is not, like I'm a nut about documentation at the right level for the right things that are not discoverable, but not everything. So the this over that is another expression of humility. and the fact that you got to use your brain. So those two brackets of those 4 bullets, I only noticed it maybe a year or so ago that, oh, sweet. That's pretty good on our part, whoever the hell wrote that. But that, that's something to not lose sight of, that kind of, I treat most things in software as a hypothesis. Hey, I think this feature would be great. Okay, good hypothesis. How are you going to prove it or disprove it? Right. And all the way from a small bit of code that you write, via a test or feature or the whole damn product. It's a hypothesis that someone wants it, or that whatever your hypothesis is. So I think that's important to note about the manifesto. And the 12 principles, yeah. James, do you have any favorites that you might want to tweet?
I probably couldn't quote one.
No, I got to go look at them.
Yeah.
Well, I used to joke when I remember doing some keynotes back in the day in Java 1 and stuff like that. And I'd watch other people give talks and recite the Agile Manifesto. I remember one gentleman I went up to and said, I don't think I could do that. He goes, I practiced. I think, I practice and practice and practice, so I can say it. And I think it's something that you need to live and absorb. And it just becomes part of how you process the things that we do for a living in building software.
Cool, Greg. I hope that that was the answer that you were looking for, or if not, at least it answered the question. Hopefully.
What's Greg's answer? I'd like to hear Greg's, because he might have something in mind.
well, no. I was mostly interested in your perspectives, but I'm surprised. I'm surprised at the blend of humility and conviction in these responses, and it seems like there may be room somewhere for amendments to leverage John's Declaration of Independence notion here. I think it's really good work. Don't get me wrong, but the world's changed a lot, and I'm wondering, who has eyes on possible amendments.
The next generation. But I could propose an amendment right now, which is, and if you need to do something different than what we said here, then go ahead.
I love it. Sheila's asked a question, which, funny enough, Sheila, was actually exactly where I was going to go. I was going to ask it a little bit differently, because one of the things that I hear is that Agile is dead now that co-location isn't as possible, in this remote and virtual world, and so Agile is dead. And Sheila brings it up as point number 6 in the manifesto, that the most effective way of communication is through face-to-face. Sheila asks the question, what does that mean to you today? I'm kind of curious as well. What do you think of the future of Agile, given that we're in a remote and distributed world? And the fact is, we're probably going to continue down this road for the foreseeable future.
I, for one, would like to get back with some people, even though, as an engineer, I'm perfectly happy in my cave working on code.
Yeah, and every once in a while, it's fun to go out and drink some beer after like a kick-ass release or something. Yeah, I mean, I've long since been working with remote teams starting before the manifesto in Russia, so commutes never seemed so long as when I had to fly 8 time zones to go to work. So I can play both sides of that. And for sure, we are social creatures that use all kinds of non-verbal communication skills to help get things done more effectively, so to speak. But at the same time, having that remoteness and that asynchronousness, I'm sure it's not, can also drive very effective other techniques around documenting just enough, having that quick asynchronous communication, even if you only have a few hours of time. So you can play both angles. And I actually went to St. Petersburg, Russia, for 2 weeks a month for years. So, yeah, there was both going on. And that was good because I could then get contact with customers and things like that, but then get contact with the development team. And in between, do the not so efficient non-face-to-face, but still it was effective because we often, the approach that I take to development is doing just enough up front to kind of lay enough of the groundwork in person as much as possible, so that other things are more in context and easier for people to act autonomously. Because that's the key. The difference between control and autonomy is if you have a vision, whether it's for a feature or for the whole damn product, your team members can then exercise their brains and act autonomously in your absence. You don't, it doesn't have to always filter through the product owner or the scrum master or anything like that. And so I think this world, if you're prepared to understand effective ways to run a team, co-located or not, you can take advantage of Zoom and Slack and other ways to communicate asynchronously.
Yeah, that asynchronous communication has become more and more prevalent through things like Teams and Slack and other messaging tools, especially in the last 18 months for sure.
There are other tools besides those, and I'd be happy to share a little bit about. I started doing remote training about 8 years ago, kind of out of need. My customer had a talk with me on Wednesday about all the things to do to the website, and on Thursday we realized we didn't have any business. We better start another line to the business, which is remote delivered training, so I could hang around in Florida more. And right, and so we changed our priorities overnight and started to go down that road. But so doing a remote training in Zoom and WebEx is okay. But there's another cool thing which I discovered, and I'd be happy to give you guys a little tour of it, or maybe at the end I could give a tour. But
that'd be great, actually. I'd be interested in seeing
Want
that.
me to look at it right now? Okay.
Well, maybe before we do that, I've got one last question kind of here, if I can, is that just as we sort of look at the future of Agile, we're starting to see it applied outside software development in many areas. In fact, at the Agile TO meetup in Toronto tomorrow night, there's a quick talk with Evan Laybourne, who is the president of the Business Agility Institute. And that's on Meetup as well. If anyone's interested, they can find it by going to Meetup and searching for Agile TO. And Evan is going to be speaking on business agility tomorrow. And I'm wondering, James and John, since the software or the Agile Manifesto specifically says right in the top, it's the Agile Manifesto for software development. And we talk about things like working with software over comprehensive documentation. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the proliferation of these principles and values expanding to areas outside of software development and how that might look in the future.
Yeah, I've done it with a couple of teams in the past year. One being like a client services team that handles, you might call them tickets, to help customers or manage account managers and help get licensed subscriptions and whatever else. And then another client they make software for schools, universities to help student engagement. So there's sort of the team that we worked with was for onboarding. All right, cool, we sold this. We're gonna go outfit such and such a university. Cool, how do we do it, right? They have a whole process where they got to ingest things from the university system. So that was a process, and we applied Lean Agile principles. We applied a lot of the same things I might do when starting up a new product. The same things I would work with, from the subject matter experts to the boots on the ground, the team doing the work. And shockingly, the first exercise is, what's the system purpose? What's your business purpose? What's your value? Like, can you just define value? And so for software, it's features and it's, outcomes that we expect to get from building software. But from an onboarding team, they were able to express the value of what it means to successfully onboard a client. And for the client services, it was the types of things that had to do with fulfilling their customer needs. So to your point, I would submit, okay, yeah, maybe working software, but even, yeah, okay, maybe some of that software-esque stuff doesn't quite apply. But the onboarding it did, because we actually helped them change a batch process for integrations. You can imagine it's a nightmare, right? Like I'm thinking, oh gosh, anytime you have to integrate with somebody else's piece of crap system, that just sucks. Speak of, I ain't fixed bidding that. But anyway, you know, so in some sense, that group probably did have a sense of working software, things they could show, algorithms that they could run, things they could test, and help them break that down through some lean and agile principles about single piece flow and, you know, small sizes. And so, yeah, even though it says software at the top, I think a lot of people have figured out, yeah, it's kind of, how do you just work better as a group to satisfy your customers' needs?
Yeah, so I'll say I agree with that, John. In a way, there's nothing new here. In the 80s, we were learning TQM, which meant total quality management. And what's a problem that we need to solve? Do we have a hypothesis of what might make that better? Should we try that hypothesis out? Yeah. Oh, it worked. Let's do more of it. Oh, it didn't work. Can we change that? Right. So there's feedback loops. You know, now PDCA and total quality management, they had nothing to do with software. And I remember my CEO at the time, or general manager, coming in and saying, James, you guys have to get on board with total quality management. It's like, sorry, John, we can't do it. Our cycle times are 6 months. So we don't have to. And considering he had no idea what we were doing, we didn't have to. So we didn't have to do PDCA. You know, now I've got a less than 5 minute cycle lots of times when I'm in the zone. We could have done it. We were not creative enough to know what to do. So certainly the ideas that we've adopted, we didn't actually, and we're rediscovering them, I think, in a way. That this working in iterations with feedback loop, stuff that's been going on for a long time in invention and discovery, and creating products and things like that. And I think about, you know, so my world I work in is embedded systems. And if you go talk to an embedded systems engineer and you described test-driven development, they would say, oh, we can't do that. No one could do that. It's like, oh, well, yeah, you could actually. Managing the dependency on, you know, you've talked about databases, all of you. Managing dependency on hardware is the same thing as managing dependency on hardware. It's the same thing, same problem. They look different. They've been hidden by nature, but they're the same kind of problem with same kinds of solutions. And so a creative person that sees, you know, what we're doing in software could say, we could do that in hardware too. Or we could do that in UI development, or we could do that in car designs or advertising, right? Fast feedback loops. They're everywhere now. Everything's happening so fast.
That's really cool. I know there's a couple of other things that we wanted to talk about. Jeff, I think you had an announcement that you wanted to make. And then James, you wanted to introduce us to a tool that you're using in your training that I'm really curious to see and learn more about. But before we do, are there any other things before we jump to those, maybe John or Kevin? This is tricky because everyone on here seems to have the same name, which is making it tricky to call it. Stahl, you were the John I was talking to there, and Kevin, if you've got anything, and Jeff, if you've got anything before we see James is James going to share with us this collaboration system he's got platform.
I don't have anything. I just wanted to throw out there a quick thank you to all of the meetup groups for getting together, and especially Jeff, John, and James for being willing to come here and do this for us. I really appreciate it. And Jeff Pulcini, I think you've got a quick announcement as well, right?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I'm just gonna grab a couple of quick slides here because I think it's easier to just see than do anything. We about 3 years ago, we got together down here in Pittsburgh and started to do a gathering. And it's turned out to be fairly successful, and we've done it every year since. And this year we are doing this in November. We've actually, our philosophy here is that Agile is a group participation sport, and we can't afford the silos. And so we try to drag in other groups and other people that are very interested in Agile. And so we've seen with IIBA and the Software Excellence, Pit QA, to put together this 2021 Agile. And we're actually going to do two things for people who are new, and we're going to have an intro to Agile day. It's all virtual Zoom. Anybody who's interested, we can accommodate you in that. So yeah, students, grads, we've got line into some universities that want to hear about this. So we're going to make this reasonable for them. Let's see. The second day is a little bit more intense, and this is really was the heart of the gathering. Our theme is individuals and interactions, and that I personally feel that that's one of the top principles or tenets that we have to look at. And so we've got 3 tracks. We keep the cost absolutely minimal. It's going to be in person, at least that's our thought right now. We're at the Regional Learning Alliance here in Cranberry. It's a great venue, $125. If you want to come virtual, $85. Let's see. Last thing in terms of an announcement is that we are looking for volunteers for this. This is a fairly big deal to try and put on. So moderators, Zoom coordinators. This third one is mentors, and there were 40 some odd people on this call, and to me that means 40 some odd mentors. There's not anybody who doesn't have something to share, and there's not anybody that doesn't have something to learn. And I think we've seen that modeled here, you know, with I mean, we've got 2 of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto, and one of the first things that came out is we're still learning, and I am very grateful for that. So please get in touch with me. Help other people who want to learn a little bit more about Agile, about your journey. We've got a great platform in which we can have some folks share. It's called Lattice. We'll deal with that then. But these are some of the things that we need. So get in touch with me, please. And if you'd like to help and promote Agile, I'm going to go maybe one bridge a little too far here and say that as John and Stahl and I talked a little bit, and other folks, this certainly started in Pittsburgh, but we're even talking about rotating this around this region in terms of next year and the years after. So God willing, you know, we'll promote Agile and we'll have a good deal of fun doing it. That's it. That's my spiel. I think we're done sharing.
Thanks, Jeff.
Cool. Yeah, good job.
All right. Well, I'm going to say thanks as well. I'll add my thanks, James and John. I had a blast chatting with you folks. I hope everyone else had as much fun as I did. That was great this through the chat as well. And if no one has anything else, James, I'd love to pass it over to you and invite you to share this training tool that you've been experimenting with.
Okay, I'm just opening up my training center here. So I'll mention a couple things about what the problem for me with using Zoom and such was, and then what this other tool does. It kind of, I will just call it the next revolution for me anyway in my business. The first revolution in my business was a thing called Cyber Dojo, which is a development environment which is hosted in the web, and you can run exercises with programmers, and you can see every little move that as a instructor working with them, I can see every move they make. So I can see when they push the test button, what change to their code they made. And so I discovered that about 10 years ago, and that allowed me to start doing remote delivered training about 8 years ago. This next revolution, my son happens to be a PhD chemist at University of Florida, and he was organizing a conference with 150 people. And he said, "Oh, Dad, you might be interested in this. Take a look at this." and he set up this conference space for you guys doing your conference in Pittsburgh. You might be interested. You have time to learn how to work this, considering it only takes 5 minutes. Actually, it takes a while to design the space, but to work it, I'm hoping we'll see that it's pretty quick. So one of the things that's missing if I'm in Zoom and I want to have people work together, it means I've got to manage their breakout rooms, and I've got a hard enough time delivering training to them. So I gave up pairing unless people happen to be together, which no one's been together recently. Like before COVID, I would tell people at a company, go to a room at your company and take the training remotely. That way you guys can work together. Once COVID happens, nobody's together. So everybody's got to work by themselves. That means nobody gets as much done. And then my son shows me this thing, and let me share my screen. I got to share a different screen here. Let's see now. And we'll share that. It's going to look kind of funny. It's a share. What's with this? Firefox. Oh, I want to share. I'm sharing the wrong environment. I want to share Zoom, not. Okay, so there's this. All right. Can you see that's? Oh no, I shared the wrong thing yet again. I'm new at this, of course.
Oh, that looks like it might be right.
And I wanted to share something different because I want to wave my arms while I'm doing it as well. So you're going to get me there.
There you go.
Okay.
Cool.
As well as the background. Okay, get out of here, little thing. No, shit. Excuse me. Try not to say that in front of the kids. So behind me is a space which I designed for my training, and there is me right there in the middle of it, walking around, a little icon there, and right over there. And if I'm standing on the stage, everybody in the space can hear what I happen to say. And if you come and stand on the stage, everybody can hear what you say too, and we can hear what each other says. And if you happen to be in a breakout session, like let's just say you happen to get assigned to room 7, you would walk over to room 7. And everybody else that was in room 7 with you would be instantaneously in a little meeting with all the people in room 7 and no one else. Well, the person on the stage could talk to you, but you'd be essentially in a room having a conversation by yourself. If you happen to need something, and this is what I do in my training class, if somebody's stuck on something and I didn't notice and they want my help, they walk over to the stage and they say, hey, James, I need a hand with such and such. And so if I think it's a problem that other people are having, because oftentimes people have the same problems, I'll say, oh, anybody having a problem with dynamic memory allocation in C, why don't you join me in the tiki bar? And then we'll all run over to the tiki bar, and I can find out actually visually without anybody saying, oh, I want to hear. All the little icons that care about this topic run over to the tiki bar. And when the icons stop moving, it's time to start talking, just like if you were in a real space. And so then we talk about that problem. And then it's like, okay, we're done talking about that. Now go back and continue your work. And I'll go back to the stage, and they'll go back to the little rooms and continue their work. And I'll monitor what they're doing. I might walk around to all the rooms and see how they're doing, and I'll join their little space. And so I can walk all around. I've got themes in these rooms as well as numbers. Here's the the aquarium room. And it's kind of, some of the stuff is maybe kind of cute, the music room, but wander around through these different spaces. And so you can make quite an elaborate place. And I think what the business of this Gather Town is trying to do is make virtual offices for people. That's one of their businesses. And you could create a place where you had individual offices here. People could hang out in their offices. And if they needed to talk to somebody, they could see that their icon happens to be in their office, and they could walk over and talk to them, just kind of like you would do if you were in the same place. And so this is making it so, the revolution to my business means now instead of 10 exercises to keep track of and 10 people, I can keep track of 10 exercises and 20 people. So that means more, and they can work together and learn more because they learn from each other as well as from me during this process. And so that's GatherTown. And after our meeting is over, if anybody wants to go there, I'll post a link. and you can wander around and see what you think of it. In each of these rooms, there's a whiteboard, and so that private to that room. So if we had some brainstorming thing that required people to work on a whiteboard, they walk over to the whiteboard, they push the X, and now you've got the whiteboard that you're sharing with the people in your room. You can share screens, you can do all kinds of stuff, just like you used to in a Zoom meeting. So that's my little tour of, I didn't invent this, but I did design this one room. And I actually designed a few rooms, but this is the next one I'm going to be using. And it is happy hour, would be a perfect place to go for happy hour.
To the tiki bar.
Yeah, to the tiki bar. All right. Well, thanks for letting me show that.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it. Looks like a really cool tool. I'm excited to play with it. Do you want to, are you going to drop the link in here so that if we
sure.
want
Yeah,
to, we can join? And I think that is our event for tonight. We're all done. So maybe usually we close at Buffalo just by mingling for a little bit. Anyone who wants to stick around and chat can, and other people can leave. So maybe we'll jump over to Gathertown and see how that
Let's see
works
if I can,
over there.
I was having troubles with them getting my link out here. So let me grab the link.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. I think it's pretty cool. 4 cities. We got people, I think, is it Lan or Lan from Tokyo? I think you got the furthest reach to us. So that's pretty cool. But no, I want to thank James, John, and the organizers for everybody taking the time. It's a couple hours away from your family. Very generous of everybody who formed, and I hope we do it again. I think it was a good night, and thank you for your generosity.
My pleasure. It's always fun. Never gets old talking about real problems.